All right, let's dive in. Today, we're taking a look at one of folklore's most terrifying figures, the Wendigo, but from a completely different angle. We're not just telling a spooky story here, we're essentially performing a psychological autopsy. We're going to use the tools of psychoanalysis to understand this myth, not as a creature feature, but as a really profound story about the human mind. So let's get into it. I want you to just hold this question in your head as we go through this. What if the monster we're all so afraid of isn't some beast lurking in the woods, but is actually a human mind coming apart at the seams, piece by horrifying piece? So, our story doesn't begin with a monster. It begins with a person, a human being pushed to the absolute edge of existence. Just try to picture this. You're a hunter, you're all alone, and you're trapped in this brutal, endless winter. This isn't just a physical struggle against the cold. It's a psychological war, a desperate fight to maintain some sense of control in a world that has turned completely against you. Now, if we put on our psychoanalyst hats for a second, we can see this hunter, at least at the beginning, as representing the ego. The ego is, well, it's the conscious you. It's the part of your mind that makes decisions, that deals with reality, and that's constantly trying to balance your deep, primal urges with the rules of the world. And right now, that rational self is fighting for its life. But that rational self is about to make a decision that changes everything. This is the moment a terrible bargain is made, and there's just no coming back from it. In his utter desperation, the hunter commits the ultimate taboo, cannibalism. But this act, it's so much more than just a way to survive. It's a psychic event. It's like a self-inflicted wound that goes way deeper than flesh and bone, shattering the very foundations of his mind. To really get the scale of the damage here, we need to talk about the superego. Think of the superego as your internal moral compass. It's that voice in your head that tells you right from wrong, the part of you that has absorbed all of society's rules and lets you see other people as, well, people, as brothers. And with that one single act of cannibalism, he doesn't just break a rule. He completely destroys the rule maker inside himself. He murders his own conscience. And with the superego gone, the entire structure of who he is starts to crumble. And this right here shows you just how catastrophic that shift is. Before, you have a psyche that's more or less balanced by the ego and the superego. Other people are seen as equals, as brothers. But after, the superego is just gone. And in its place, the raw, primal id is unleashed. Suddenly, people aren't kin anymore. They're simply resources to be consumed. This is the deal he made. It's a classic Faustian bargain. In exchange for surviving that horrible winter, he gets this monstrous, unstoppable power. But the price he paid was everything, literally everything that made him human. A truly awful trade. So, with the moral compass shattered and the rational mind in pieces, what's left? What's driving the bus now? We need to look at what's been put in charge of the psyche. Well, meet the id. This is the most primitive, ancient part of our minds. It's pure, unchecked instinct. And for the Wendigo, the id is just one thing, a relentless, insatiable hunger, all governed by a terrifyingly simple and corrupted logic: consume. And what does that logic actually look like in practice? It's a complete regression to a primitive, almost infantile state, where the only way to relate to the world is through your mouth. Other living things aren't people anymore. They're just fuel for this eternal, gnawing hunger. The Wendigo isn't just hunting to eat. It's hunting to try and fill this massive spiritual void within that can never, ever be filled. Any kind of human connection becomes totally impossible. But here's the great, twisted paradox in all of this. This relentless drive to consume, to grow, to dominate, it isn't a drive for life. It's actually a march in the complete opposite direction. You know, in psychoanalysis, there's this concept called the death drive, or thanatos. It's this deep, unconscious urge that we all supposedly have towards self-destruction, this quiet desire to return to a state of calm, of non-existence. The Wendigo's endless, destructive rampage is a perfect and frankly horrifying picture of this drive in action. This parable of the infinite horizon really lays out how this self-destruction works. So, step 1. It consumes the earth to get stronger. Step 2, it consumes the mountains to get even bigger. It seems like it's conquering everything in its path, right? But look at the final step. In the process of conquering everything, it destroys the very ground it's standing on. Its quest for more power is, at the same time, an act of total self-sabotage. So ultimately, the goal here isn't to live forever or to become the most powerful being. No, the goal is to reduce everything, the world, other people, and eventually itself, to total silence. The goal is to create a kingdom of nothingness.
This march towards nothing, of course, has a final, horrifying destination. It's the point where that logic of consumption finally reaches its only possible conclusion.
Think about it. What happens when an insatiable force runs out of things to consume? When there is literally nothing left in the world to devour? That destructive logic that hunger, it doesn't just switch off. No, it turns inward. It has to find the only resource that's left. And this leads to the creature's final awful paradox. It begins to feast on its own limbs, on its own being. It's described as an agonizing expansion, this horrifying state where it feels like it's growing bigger and hungrier, but in reality, it's just becoming a hollow shell, diminishing itself into nothing. This metaphor just perfectly captures the entire psychological tragedy. The Wendigo is like an architect who gets so obsessed with building his mansion higher that he starts tearing down the support beams on the first floor just to get more wood for a balcony on the third. Yeah, he might get a slightly better view for a moment, but he has fundamentally guaranteed that the entire structure is going to come crashing down and bury him in its own debris.
Which leaves us with one last haunting question to think about. The story of the Wendigo isn't just about a monster in the woods. It's a cautionary tale about the voids that can open up inside of us. It forces us to ask, when our own hunger consumes everything and everyone around us, what is finally left to devour?